All right, seeing that it's now 8:30, I'd like to call the Law and Government Committee to order. Kathy, can we have a roll call, please?
Sauger.
Here.
Wagner. Here. Hendricks.
Here.
Campbell.
Here.
Kunkel.
Here.
Shorten.
Here.
Altough.
Here. May I have a motion to allow Eric and Michael to participate by Member Campbell, seconded by Member Kunkel. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
All right, gentlemen, you are now officially in. Next item on the agenda is the minute approval. Can I have a motion to approve the minutes as presented? Ms. Wagner, seconded by Mr. Kunkel. All those in favor say aye.
Aye. Aye.
Anyone opposed? Minutes approved. Is there any public comment? I don't think so. I don't see anybody that I don't know. So, member comment. Anyone have any comments this morning? I just want to note that most of our communities had a Memorial Day ceremony, well attended, so that was wonderful that we still observe and still have people who are interested in acknowledging commitment and dedication. Commitment. Yeah, it was beautiful. Yeah, everywhere. Blue Nest was the keynote speaker in Woodstock, so as a veteran, I think that's pretty cool too. Anything else? New business. There is no new business today. Moving on to legislative update. You should have all gotten a report from Alicia emailed. We do have some hard copies if you want to look at that. Just so you all remember, Alicia got married over the weekend. Yes, no pictures on the internet, on Facebook, nothing yet. But if you want to remember that, it was a big weekend for her, and she still got the report out. So I thank her very, very much. The House is still in. They return today at noon. I do believe that everything that we've seen with regard to the budget, nothing will change. There are still some outstanding issues. I don't know, Rob, do you want to real quickly make a comment about your testimony?
Yeah, so I went in front of the, I forget the name.
Appropriations. Public safety
Committee.
appropriations.
Yeah, public safety and infrastructure, thank you. And spoke to them about the police social work bill that had passed through the House but kind of got hung up a little bit. Chairman Belt afterwards came up and said that he fully supported it. In the hallways, I was able to meet up with Senator Sims, who our executive director of the Illinois Sheriff's Association pulled him aside and kind of let him know why I was down there. And he said that he would do his best to get that, try to get that into the appropriations as well. So I haven't heard anything, or I tried to pull up the bill to see how.
It's not in the budget.
Okay.
So that I can see it.
Sure.
One always learns thereafter that it may be buried somewhere that
Right.
I am not cognizant of.
Sure.
However, a commitment was made to Representative Ness. If it isn't in the budget, there will be further discussion during veto session. So thank you. Your testimony was unbelievably well presented and accurate. It was well received. So I appreciate the fact that you took the time to go all the way down there and make the case. So, anybody have any questions? We did relatively well. You know, you heard that at the board meeting. We did relatively well with receiving federal dollars and earmarks. So we should pat ourselves on the back for the efforts that staff and all of us have done. Routine consent agenda. Anything that anybody wants to remove or need further explanation of? If not, can I have a motion to approve the consent agenda? Ms. Campbell, seconded by Mr. Sauger. And can we have a roll call vote?
Wagner.
Yes.
Kunkel.
Yes.
Campbell.
Yes.
Hendricks.
Yes.
Sauger.
Yes.
Shorten.
Yes.
Altough.
Here, yes, sorry. Ms. Campbell, you had a comment?
Yes, I did want to thank Sandra for the spreadsheet on the vehicles. Because we just did the consent agenda, we actually didn't talk about it. But this is fantastic. Because one of the things I'd asked about was when we would approve one, I really wouldn't know how much money would be left. And so, not that they wouldn't be spending more than they had, but it was just a great to have that information.
It's a great visual so that we know exactly.
Thank you so much for taking that time.
We'll try to next year, when the budget goes through, every time we purchase, we'll try to include one, so you're updated as we go throughout the spending.
Great.
Okay, wonderful.
Are you still having problems getting them in a timely fashion, or is that been,
Yeah, so Dodge hasn't announced what they're gonna do with the Chargers come around for 2025 yet. We still haven't really seen what that plan looks like. They've announced the vehicles, but we haven't seen it yet. Trucks just went through a revamping, so that was the original, or the 2025 truck that we went through is gonna be like a test for us, so we don't know what that looks like. It hasn't really been fully announced yet. And the Durangos, I think, are gonna be continued another year. It's not so much actually the vehicles, it's gonna be more of the parts now. And the cost of the parts is going to be challenging, not just for our agency, but for all law enforcement agencies. So we'll see. It doesn't look like Chevy and Ford are pushing hard on police vehicles. Dodge has done a good job for us, but if Dodge is the only one, and then maybe they get a monopoly, and we start seeing some other issues with that too. So it's all kind of very fluid. Rob, our fleet manager, does a really, really good job of trying to stay in front of it. He's on the Dodge first responder board, so he is part of what it looks like as when they remodel vehicles or do whatever for police. That something as simple as where the seatbelt is when you get in the car, for how it hangs up on your weapon. That type of stuff is what he goes through. So we do a really, really good job of staying in front of that, but there are going to be some serious challenges as it comes to vehicles and costs and what have you.
do you have any idea? Are you seeing any kind of percentage? I mean, I know we're going to talk a little bit about budget today.
I don't, because it seems like as we try to keep finding vendors that are trying to undercut each other. I think we probably have done a good. I know we've done a good job of it, but it's hard to say. I don't have enough data on it. I don't know.
We did try to salvage parts like the light bars and everything as we transition cars out, because that we can at least control a little bit more than the cost of the vehicle.
And we appreciate that, more than we could possibly say. Moving on, reports. If you guys will recall, when we've done some interviews in the past, and we appoint to 5, it's Fox River Grove, Crystal Lake Rural, Harvard, Marengo Rescue, and then of course McHenry Township. We appoint to their boards the individuals, and during our interviews we've heard some what I consider to be challenging and frightening concerns and opportunities with regard to costs and providing services. So in talking to County Administrator Austin, we decided that it might be nice to invite McHenry, they're the largest, they cover the largest swath here in McHenry County, to talk a little bit about what the iteration, their evolution, and then some of the challenges that they experience. You're looking at me with that. So anyway, they're here today to give us kind of an idea of what we as county board members should expect, and maybe it will stimulate some further conversation amongst ourselves about how we're going to oversee our appointments and what's going on in those departments, and being available to them for resources or assistance. And if you'll remember, the one I'm going to talk about now is Harvard, and how they're having some difficulty with finances and they couldn't get their referendum passed. And I don't know if anybody sitting in this room really was aware of all of their efforts. So maybe we can have a little bit better coordination if we know what's going on. So I'm going to turn it over to Chief Horst. Can you introduce the board members that you've brought with you, and then go ahead and make your presentation, sir.
Yes, I will. And good morning, everyone. And we, first off, thank you for the opportunity to come and speak to the committee this morning. I know that your time is valuable. We appreciate it. We are extremely proud of our organization and could talk to it at quite length, and would be glad to do that. I'd like to, before we get going, introduce our trustees that are here with us today. Gentlemen in the red shirt, President Alan Miller, the president of our board.
You just reappointed me.
And also the treasurer of our board, Christopher Bennett. And so we wanted to come together as a team, which we are at the McHenry Township Fire District. And while I'll be going through the presentation, the trustees are also certainly here for any questions or any dialogue with the committee. My name is Rudy Horst. I'm the fire chief for the McHenry Township Fire District. Been in the fire service for 41 years, the last 14 years with McHenry, and about 3.5 years as fortunate to be our fire chief. So the items, after talking with Chairman Altoff, the items that we want to touch on today is just a little bit on fire protection in McHenry County, just kind of a broad perspective on that. A little bit of the history and the current status of the McHenry Township Fire Protection District, some of the challenges that are out there, and some of the ways that we're working to meet those challenges, or in other words, some of the opportunities that are before us as a fire district to address those. I'm going to kind of be going at it from about the 10,000-foot view, because any of these we could get into much more depth, and we would welcome the opportunity to come back before the committee or before the county board to talk about any of these items more in depth. But in talking to Chairman Altoff, I will try and keep it to about maybe 15 minutes, and then an opportunity for any questions you might have. So fire protection in McHenry County, there are 15 fire departments based in McHenry County, where they are primarily based in our county. Now there are a couple of additional ones, Wakanda, Barrington Countryside, Fox Lake, that have a small portion of McHenry County in their coverage area. But there are predominantly 15 fire departments. 14 of those are fire protection districts or a rescue district, the Marengo Rescue District. The one municipality is the city of Crystal Lake, but everything else is a fire protection district. The fire districts, the fire departments in McHenry County are what we call all hazards agencies, in that it's not just fire protection, it's emergency medical services, it's public education, it's inspections, it's what we call community risk reduction, it's specialized responses, hazardous materials, trench collapses, elevated rescues, water rescue. All of those things over the years have become functions of each and every one of the fire departments in McHenry County. Now, how they provide that and to what degree, there's some variance in that, but all of us are involved in doing that. All of the departments in McHenry County began as volunteer fire departments, which is a very common thing. In fact, about 70 to 80% of the state of Illinois is still volunteer fire departments, but we all have our roots, and very much so McHenry Township does, as a volunteer fire department. The way that the departments are staffed, a variety of different ways. We have career, which is another term for full-time. We have career personnel, we have volunteer or paid on call. There are still a couple of departments in the county where personnel predominantly respond from home or their places of work. And we have what are called combination departments, which is what McHenry Township has evolved into, especially over the last 3 or 4 years, where it's a combination of full-time people and then also part-time, paid on call, or volunteers. So a variety of different ways that we carry out that service to the public in the way that we staff. All of the fire departments except for Union also provide EMS. Union's EMS, Emergency Medical Services, is provided by the Marengo Rescue District. And for the fire departments that do provide EMS, that is anywhere from 70 to 80% of our call volume. So EMS is very much a critical and very large part of what we do as organizations. I know this is kind of hard to see from where you're sitting, but this is basically a map of McHenry County and the roughly 500 square miles. And the different colors indicate the different fire protection districts. And you can see they range from some very large ones, such as Harvard, Marengo, to smaller ones, such as the Fox River Grove. And kind of in the midst of all that, just a little bit below the green portion you see, which is the Woodstock Fire Rescue District, is the McHenry Township Fire District. So the districts
A
vary.
copy of this will also be given
Yes.
to all of you too, so you'll have this map.
Yes,
Thank you.
very
Thanks,
good.
Ruby.
Thank you for mentioning that. So while they vary in size, most of the fire districts cover one or more municipalities as well as surrounding unincorporated portions of McHenry County. So to talk about a little bit about the McHenry Township Fire Protection District. So our fire district started in 1939. Prior to that, there was actually a McHenry Volunteer Fire Department operated by the city. But in 1939, the McHenry Township Fire District was formed. The name came from the fact that back at that time, all of our coverage areas within McHenry Township. Now, a good portion of our district is actually in Nunda Township as well. But the name stuck. Occasionally, we do get confused for McHenry Township. Someone will stop in and be looking for the tax assessor and that kind of thing. But we are also the result of a merger or a consolidation of several other organizations. Again, the McHenry Volunteer Fire Department, the Lily Lake Volunteer Fire Department, back in the 1950s became part of the district. That was out in the Lakemore area. And then the McHenry Area Rescue Squad and the Johnsburg Rescue Squad, which also merged into the district to form what we have today. And our department was 100% volunteer or paid on call up until about 1996. In fact, up until recently, when we started going through a transition, we were the largest and the busiest part-time fire department in the state of Illinois. And that's of over 1,300 fire departments. So we were the largest part-time department. We believe, and this is something we're very proud of, is that our fire district has a long history of innovation and of making changes and adapting to the needs of the community. Emergency medical services was added into our department back in 1983 and 1990. That's when, those are the time periods when the two rescue squads joined into the department. We started a transition from volunteer individuals coming from home or their businesses to what we called paid on call. A very small amount was paid on a per call basis to our members. We started what was called the paid on premise program in 1986, and this was an innovation in that we started to pay crews, and this was during the time when Trustee Bennett was the chief of our department. We started a program where we paid individuals to be in the stations. First started out during the day, then it expanded to 24 hours and expanded throughout the 3 fire stations that we had at the time. We had a duty officer program that was started, which was pretty innovative and maybe even a little controversial back at that time, and that was where it was established that there was always an officer of the department in charge, 24 hours a day, 7 days a week, even on the weekends. We went to a full-time chief in 2005, and we really began our transition to a combination department in 2020. Prior to that, we had 3 full-time people on shift, our battalion chiefs, which are our shift commanders. And then in 2020, and I'll get into the reasons in a little bit shortly here, we began what has been a rapid transition to a fully combination fire department. So when we look at the McHenry Township Fire District today, in 4 years, barely 4 years, we have gone from 3 full-time individuals on shift, working out of our 5 fire stations, to now, with some staffing approvals that were approved 2 weeks ago by our board, we will have now 51 full-time people on shift. During that same time period, we've gone from about 130 part-time members or paid-on-call members down to only 50. And so that balance between full-time and part-time for us has been rapidly changing, as it has for a lot of fire departments. And the 2 biggest reasons for that shift for our organization has been the loss of part-time, as well as not being able to maintain them in sufficient numbers to provide the level of service, as well as, and this is kind of a consequence of that, not having enough part-time members to work the number of hours that we need in order to provide service to the community. We protect 9 different communities. So from Ringwood at the north, all the way down to the southeast corner with Holiday Hills and even a portion of Island Lake. On the east from the village of Lakemore up to the county line, and to the west all the way through McHenry, and we have a portion of Bull Valley, which we share with the Woodstock Fire District. So about 56 square miles that we protect, 5 fire stations that are located throughout the district. We are in the planning stages for station number 6, which will be located south of Northwestern McHenry Hospital at the intersection of Shamrock and Route 31 to protect that southern part of our district. About 56 square miles, 55,000 residents, which is, with some of the development going on in our district, is rapidly changing, increasing. And last year we ran over 7,500 calls. That made us the busiest fire protection district in McHenry County. And as I mentioned, there's over 1,300 fire departments in the state of Illinois. We ranked number 31 as far as our volume. So very, very, very busy organization. The challenges facing the fire service, and I think some of these are the same challenges that are facing, whether it's the McHenry County Sheriff's Office, whether it's the McHenry County Board. A number of different challenges we could talk about, but three that I'll just hit on briefly this morning is staffing, some of the financial challenges, and then the one that Chairman Altoff had also asked me to speak on, and that is some of the impacts, positively and negatively, of statewide legislation. Staffing is something that is very much has reached a critical issue in the fire service. Not only recruitment, but also the retention of personnel. And it really is, it's a local problem, it's a statewide problem, national, it's really an international problem. In the United Kingdom, in Ireland, in Australia, in other countries, they are experiencing staffing issues in public safety. Law enforcement certainly has experienced that. That is also something that we experience in the fire service. COVID definitely had an impact on that, but I believe we started to see those changes even before the COVID pandemic. But it definitely had an impact on that. Resulted in a lot of retirements nationwide within the fire service. It's also believed that it gave some individuals pause as to whether they want to come into the fire service out of concerns of being exposed to infectious disease and that type of things. It is something that has affected the career service, part-time, volunteer, all the different aspects, all the different ways that fire departments staff their organizations. They have all been impacted by the lack of individuals interested and then keeping and maintaining those individuals. So so there's a lot of different reasons why that occurs. On the volunteer side or the paid on call, a lot of it is available time. And for the fire service, is the training requirements have increased substantially over the years from what it was a long time ago. The demands as the departments get busier. For many individuals, it has just not been something possible for them to do on a part-time or volunteer basis. On the career side, the career departments are also facing shortages. And as I know, the county has also talked about it, departments have, in order to remain competitive, and that's truly what it is. We used to look at other fire departments as we would call them comparables. We would compare their salaries versus ours. Now more and more, they are basically competitors. We are all competing for a small pool of individuals. So the days of, years ago, and again, when the departments were volunteer, of the local banker, the local businessman, the local executive at a HVAC firm, of leaving their business, leaving their home multiple times a day sometimes to come down to the fire station and respond to a call, those days have really changed. The vast majority of individuals that we hire, and I think this is common for all departments that we hire as part-time or paid-on-call members, are seeking to become career firefighters. And so one of the impacts of that is where we would maybe have, we have a group of our members who they work on HVAC. I have a school principal. I have a mechanic. I have those folks that came into it not seeking to be career firefighters and have stayed for 20 plus years. A member that we hire now will be with us maybe an average of 3 years. Because within that 3-year period, they are going to get hired by a full-time fire department. And because of some of the restrictions that the other communities have, once they get hired, they're no longer able to work for us on a part-time basis. And everyone is experiencing that. So staffing is very much a challenge for the fire departments. Closely related to that is also the financial challenges, and obviously the challenges of the economy, the changing demographics. McHenry County, I think, is a good example of that, especially in the western portions of the county, as those areas become more suburban. The rural areas, as the subdivisions pop up, they become more suburban. There's not always the industrial or commercial tax base to support the increased demands of service on the fire department or on the police department or any other city services. We also have an aging population, which is, and I'm rapidly in that group, also has an impact on the demands for service. So when you combine those two things together, providing the service and providing it at the level that the public expects and the public deserves becomes more and more of a financial challenge. Because obviously just raising taxes is not the answer. Salaries and benefits, in order to remain competitive, as I mentioned to you earlier, departments have, whether it's for full-time personnel or for part-time or paid-on-call personnel, have needed to change and increase their salary and benefits in order to attract people and in order to hang on to those folks. And the cost of equipment and apparatus, and I know this is something you've seen at the county level, we see it very much in the fire service, that has rapidly changed really since the onset of COVID. And just to give you an example, the fire engine which you might see going down Ware Road here, whether it's from Woodstock or McHenry or anyone else, a few years ago, that fire engine may cost $500,000 to $600,000. And that was a really outfitted, well fire engine. And you could get that engine maybe a year to 2 years. Now that same engine will cost $1 million or more, and it's about 3 years to get that piece of equipment. The ladder truck, the large ladder truck that you see with the large ladder on top of it, a few years ago, maybe $750,000 to $1 million at the high side. Now those are more in the $2 million or more range, and it'll take about 4 years to get it. So all of those have added into some of the financial challenges that we face. The third one, just to touch on, is some of the state legal mandates. And very definitely there is some legislation that is beneficial to the fire service. Things such as recently the state passed a volunteer tax credit that'll benefit some of the predominantly volunteer fire departments, a $500 tax credit. Some of the things that have been worked on to give options for alternative revenue for fire protection, competitive bidding changes. Currently there is a bill downstate that would offer a tax credit for installing home sprinklers, as well as there is also some legislation being proposed that would provide some funding to help train paramedics. And that is one of the shortages we have in Illinois. It's not only a shortage of firefighters, but a shortage of paramedics. Sometimes the legislation creates challenges for the fire service. And I'm not saying that the legislation is bad. I'm not saying that the intent behind it is not good. I'm not saying that it's not deserved, but it does have an impact. More recently, the Paid Leave for All Act. Fantastic idea. We are providing paid time off for our part-time members, but the impact of that, if you will, is that becomes an additional expense. Again, we're not against it. It's just it's a financial reality. Minimum wage. Again, not saying that it's not a bad idea to raise the minimum wage, but that also becomes a financial impact on the fire departments. And some of the additional training things that have been implemented, again, very good thought process behind it, but those are implemented as additional training requirements without any funding at the state level. So they become unfunded mandates that are left to the local level to figure out how to pay for those things. Again, not saying that they are bad things, but it adds to the challenges for us. So here's some of the ways, now that I've touched on those three challenges, here's some of the ways for our fire district that we are working to meet those challenges. And as our board often says, we like to look at them as these are opportunities. They're opportunities to take a look at the way that we do things. Is it still the right way to do things? Is there a different way to do things? But here's some of the ways that our fire district is working to meet those challenges. Number one, we have a very cohesive and fiscally conservative board. And I'm not saying that because I have two of my bosses in the room, but it is a reality in that, and I have worked over the last 41 years for different organizations in different communities. And I say confidently, we have a very cohesive and balanced board. Our organization from the board on down is fiscally conservative, and that has paid benefits to our fire district. When you look at our tax rate, of all the fire districts in McHenry County, we are the third lowest on our tax rate. And that is a result of being fiscally conservative. And that really is instilled throughout our entire organization. In our fire department, all the way down to the newest firefighter has an opportunity to have input into the budget process. And our members have become really good at separating needs from wants, so that we maintain a balanced budget. So being fiscally conservative. Strategic and long-range planning is something that's important to our board. We are in the final stages. In fact, Chairman Altoff was involved in this. We will be going to the board for approval of our new 5-year strategic plan, which is a very comprehensive document. It had input from our entire organization. We also do long-range financial planning and capital planning. Our current long-range capital plans go out 15 years to 2038 on some of our capital planning. Our culture and our work environment. This is something that's important. I believe if you were to meet any one of our members and ask them about the culture and the work environment at the McHenry Township Fire District, I believe that they would say that it is a good work environment, and the board on down works hard to maintain that. We provide an opportunity for our members to have input into the organization. Something that was implemented by our board last year is we now, especially as we add more and more full-time employees, twice a year we have an open meeting with all of our employees, full-time and part-time, with 2 of the trustees present to talk about salary and benefit issues, to see what their concerns are, to help us identify what are the things that are top topics for our people. So we work very hard, not only from a monetary standpoint, but on the other non-monetary things to have a good culture and work environment. Alternative revenue is something that we take a look at. We continually look at, are there other revenue sources that would be appropriate for the district? Our cooperative efforts. And this is something where I think the fire service does a lot of, in that the departments within McHenry County, and really even beyond that, we work very cooperatively. You may be familiar with MABUS, which is our mutual aid system. And what that basically means is that if we have a fire in McHenry, there's going to be an engine from Woodstock, and there's going to be a truck from Crystal Lake, and vice versa. That is one way that we share resources, and we share the expenses of those resources. When it comes to our special teams, rather than each department having a fully staffed dive team and hazmat team, the 45 departments in McHenry and Lake County, we collectively share that cost and share that membership. With the sheriff here, I want to mention another cooperative effort. We have a very strong partnership and relationship with the McHenry County Sheriff's Office, in particular in the area of the social worker program. And until recently, and we were very proud of this, and I realized a better office space became available, we provided at one of our fire stations office space for one of the sheriff's social workers. So we have a very strong relationship with them. Alternative ways of providing service. This is something that, as part of our new strategic plan, we're going to be taking a hard and very in-depth look at, is just because we provided service one way for a long time, is that still the best way to provide it to the community? And I personally believe that where a good amount of the innovation in providing service is going to come from is before that person even dials 911. We do things now, as do a lot of other departments, as many other departments do, what we call EMS follow-ups. If we have a resident that is calling us a number of times, maybe it's just to help them back into bed. We absolutely go on and we do that. But we have a person in the department that will follow up with them to see, maybe there's a social service need. Maybe there is other needs that they have that for their benefit will provide them better service, and maybe they don't have to make that 911 call. So we're going to be taking a hard look at those things. And we're also looking at the next generation to continue to bring in new members for the organization, both part-time and full-time, because our intent is to stay a combination fire department. We are in the process of setting the framework for an explorer or a cadet post within our department. We've talked with our high school district about starting a 4-year program where we would be in front of the kids from freshman level all the way through seniors. And actually, at some point, we're going to reach down into the junior highs to grab those folks that are interested in the fire service.
And I'm going to jump in and say that's not any different than what we're doing, if you'll remember, at the county level with our high school programs that we're doing, with the manufacturing program that EDC started several years ago. There's now manufacturing in our high schools. I mean, that's what we're trying to do, is to let parents and kids know that there are alternative job career choices besides going to a 4-year college. So,
Yes,
thank you.
100%. And actually, you know, when you mentioned the manufacturing fair and that type of thing, we've talked to McHenry County College and to the high schools, and we've told them, if you're doing a career fair for people that want to be plumbers and electricians, we want a table at the career fair. Because they can be a full-time electrician and they can work for us part-time. Or they can be full-time for us and on their days off, they can be on. So we have made a concerted effort that we want to be at all those different events. So we have members that do that for us. So those are just some of the different ways, and I know that was a real quick overview of the way that the McHenry Township Fire District is working to meet some of the challenges that are facing the fire service. And with that, we would welcome any questions.
I want to go back and talk a little, and you didn't mention it, but the state requirement now that you need to always have an ambulance with a fire truck on a fire call, right? That's required, that you have to send or is it the fire truck with the ambulance? Which one is it? It's one or the other. That on all the calls there has to be both, and okay.
No, go ahead.
No, I'm going to send you that. But the concern that I want people to be aware of is if there are mutual aid calls and we're having trouble staffing and you have to have, you know, certain amounts of equipment out in the field, it just escalates. You know, if you have a major industrial fire and then there's a house fire and you've got everybody at the industrial, I mean, there's going to be challenges, and I just want everybody to be aware that those are the kinds of things that we're considering at this point. How do we assist? We have shared services. How do we assist our partners in ensuring that they have not only the equipment, but the actual individuals to respond, and that the service is available wherever it is in McHenry County?
Very good.
So that's why I wanted to talk a little bit about the staffing. It goes bigger than just one department. It really
absolutely
does. Yeah. So, anybody have any questions? Guys on the phone, Eric or Michael?
No questions for me.
I do not.
Kelly?
So
then
I
Carolyn?
live in unincorporated Crystal Lake and
Yes.
Nunda, so we would probably use your services. There was a sign before that there was going to be a station number 6 on Ames Road. Is that changed now? You said it was going to be,
On Ames Road.
I thought it was on, there used to be something on Ames, I thought.
We purchased property across from the hospital about 8 years ago in
So,
anticipation of building Station 6.
so this must be something different.
It's
Okay.
right at Shamrock Lane, as you stop and go right, it's on the east side.
Okay, so I don't know what I'm seeing. Maybe it's gone. So the big question is, we know, especially with firefighters, their mental health, you know, this can be detrimental to their mental health, and the suicide rates are higher. What kind of programs do you have here and are maybe shared within the different services?
I'm glad you asked that question. The mental health for firefighters, and I think Trustee Bennett could comment on this as well. Compared to what it was a number of years ago, there's been significantly more and well-deserved attention to that. In our department, some of the things that we've done, and we have one of our lieutenants who also is in the military, and so he has experience with those issues on the military side, in serving overseas and in combat and that type of thing. Heads that up for us. So we provide a variety of, we call tools to our individuals. You can go on our website, and we have a page on our website, and it's actually set up so it's accessible to anyone, And it's done that way, so if our employees, if our members want to go to that page, there's no concern of, well, it's tracking that I'm going to that page. We have a variety of resources there. We have a pretty robust employee assistance program. We have 2 fire department chaplains. We provide them access to, there's a Illinois peer support organization. So we provide them with access to probably 4 or 5 different tools to see what might work for the individual. As well as there's a concerted effort within the department to build into our culture that it's okay to say that you want to talk to someone. It's okay to say that it's not a sign of weakness, it's a sign of strength. And in fact, all 6 chief officers, we signed a pledge supporting the mental health efforts, and that's on that page. So we said to our members, it's so important to us that all 6 of us chief officers are going to sign that pledge that we are going to do and provide and support certain things, and we want to. So it's very much for our organization an important topic and one that we're putting a lot of effort towards.
And that service is provided to every firefighter at no cost.
And thank you for mentioning that, Trustee Bennett. The fire district pays the cost of that. That's always been important to our board, and that, like with our employee assistance program, that is not only for the firefighter, but that's also for their immediate family. That's just for their spouses, that's for their children. And we pay for that service for them.
Carolyn, thank you. Well, just to kind of follow up on that, because you talked about having tough difficulty getting people to come. Like my son's, a friend of my son's, is going into the fire service and has been working hard on that. But and when you talk about the mental health, I mean, I know fighting fires is also very traumatic and everything else. But today, if 80% of what you're going to is a car crash, and you're trying to get people out of, it's got to be horrific. And I don't know if that's playing into, having difficulty getting people to come in, because it's not strictly fighting fires, but it's much more complicated than that as a career. So I don't know, but this, I've actually have had your website open, but the peer support page looks fantastic.
Thank you.
And it looks like you have a lot of resources, but I can imagine just how hard, I mean, even with, the police and the sheriff's departments, what you see in these crashes and what you have to respond to. It's got to be difficult.
And where does your son want to be a firefighter?
It's my friend's son, and I forget where, he had a couple in mind, but I don't know where he's.
Here, we can pass them out as bad
Yeah, exactly. I think he had to look at you too, a couple, so.
We just happen to have some.
We just happen to have some.
Absolutely. And so I don't know if that's feeding into having difficulty recruiting people in terms of the type of work it's become over time. I don't know. And the other thing I was going to say, it was interesting to me that all departments handle all hazards, right? What was the term?
Yes,
Mavis.
we're all hazard departments, yes.
Okay.
Sorry.
And I really appreciate the fact that Karen is
Yes.
always at our EMA meetings.
Karen Bush.
Yes,
Our
Karen
Deputy
Bush,
Chief of
our
Operations.
deputy chief, yes. I really appreciate that, because given the fact that every department is handling all hazards, the fact that she's there every single time is fantastic, so.
Thank you. Thank you. I will pass that along. I appreciate that.
Any other questions, comments? Mr. Sager?
First, Chief, thank you so much. You provided an extremely represented overview, so thank you very much. I was wondering, how do you believe that the call centers are working now? We had to kind of reduce from 6 down to 3 in the county, and what are your perceptions about that?
I believe that with the consolidation and going down to the 3 centers, and I sit on the board for NEARCOM, which provides dispatch for 8 police departments and 8 fire departments. And my perspective on that is that the consolidation is working well. I know that the 3 dispatch centers, McHenry County Sheriff, CCOM, and then also NEARCOM, I know that there's coordination between those 3 dispatch centers. So from my perspective, it's working well. And a side note to that, what has helped also is the ETSB, the Emergency Telephone Services Board, has also assisted not only the dispatch centers, but the fire departments in McHenry County through funding. That helps to pay for our radio systems, it helps to pay for the station alerting. That has been very beneficial. So that's one area where McHenry County is definitely assisting the dispatch center. So my perspective is working well.
Just a couple of other questions.
Yes.
I think we're all aware in today's social environment that there is a reticence for individuals to become involved in public service, public safety, if you will, because they think that there are a lot of outside barriers, a lot of outside influencers that are saying, you know, we don't want to put ourselves into the public eye like that for whatever reason. And so what other barriers out there exist in your mind, aside from the hours, aside from the pay, aside from the public perceptions about public servants today, are there to people becoming involved in fire safety?
Yeah, you know, and that is a question that I think nationwide, the fire service and law enforcement, we've been asking ourselves is what are for us who have been in the fire service, especially for a long time, it's very hard for us to understand why someone would not want to go into this career. For us, this is the best career that is possible. I think the things that you mentioned have had an impact on that. I think that we talk to folks and we talk to young people and we hear a variety of things. With some of the other types of career fields that have had to raise their salaries, I've had individuals tell me, you know what, for a couple of dollars less an hour, I don't have to go through 2 years of training, because that's about what it takes to be fully functional as a firefighter. I'm not going to have to work nights or weekends, or be away from my family on holidays, or be exposed to the hazards of that. So I think we've heard so many different reasons. So if someone could figure out the exact, you know, if we address these 3 things, we'll solve it, that would be fantastic. But we find as many different reasons as there are individuals. But going back to something that Chairman Althoff said, we're making a concerted effort to, at the high school level and at the college level, to get that message out to the young people that, you know, this is a career field with tremendous opportunities, and you can, whether you do it part-time, paid on call, or you do it as a full-time member. Pam, you had mentioned that, you know, people knowing that you don't have to have a 4-year college degree in order to become a firefighter. Now, in order to advance in our profession, yes, you need those things, but we're trying to stress to them, especially the young people that are more hands-on oriented, and I have a son who's an engineer that's more hands-on oriented, that this is a perfect career field for that. So we're trying to, not so much dispel myths, but we're trying to get that word out that this is a very good, and not only to the kids, I think it's important that we get it to the parents. Because I'll be honest, when my 2 kids were finishing high, I mean, my mindset was, well, of course you're going to Northern Illinois University and you're going to get a 4-year degree. And over the intervening years, my thought process has changed some. So I think it's important that we get the message to the parents as well that, hey, this is a very good career field for your son or daughter. Whether the interest is in firefighting or in emergency medicine or in the other areas that we covered. So I think that's part of how we're trying to address that.
Has there been any concerted efforts for private contracting of services? Are there efforts out there where, just like kind of security firms, if you will, and I don't really know what I'm talking about, so I apologize here, but is there an effort in that regard?
There actually is. There are companies, private companies that provide, and you'll hear it referred to as contract medics, where they provide the paramedic personnel for a fire department, but they are employees of that private company. Their paycheck comes from that private company. And many fire departments in Illinois and in other areas, as they evolved, many of them went through a stage where they utilized a contract service. And there are 2 or 3 big ones out there in Illinois. Years ago, and this is something that our district examined very closely back in 2021, before we made the decision to hire more full-time members. Looking at salary, looking at benefits, looking at pension costs, we examined that very, very closely. And at one time, years ago, there was more of a financial incentive to utilize that route. And for many fire departments, that was an initial step of having full-time people without all the things that come with them being your own employees. What has happened and what we found when we analyzed it is that those private contract firms are having the same staffing difficulties as the fire departments. And so a couple things happened, and this is part of what led us in a different direction. They're having problems with staffing. So it wasn't changing the issue. They were having problems with staffing, and in order to remain competitive, they in some cases have had to significantly raise what their salaries are. And some of them are now even offering signing bonuses and that type of thing, to where that financial incentive that existed, say 20, 25 years ago, that has really narrowed or started to go away. And that's my opinion. So those are out there. But my belief, just looking at the Illinois Fire Service, is that it's going to continue to be more and more challenging for those services. They're having some of the same challenges that we are.
And I'm opining, I think a lot of it has to do with personal liability. COVID saw death of first responders, significant. You know, you think about, I'm going to choose my career, I'm not going to put myself in harm's way personally, and then just liability. What if I make a mistake and somebody sues me? And now everybody is personally liable. So it's hard. I mean, I think it's really hard to get beyond some of those issues and say this is a better career than, you know, sitting at home and being an IT person, right? I mean, it's going to be a challenge. So Carolyn.
Just if you could, and this is going to be a shift back, but you had mentioned about a lot of your call, or more of your calls are coming as we age, as the population ages, and having had a mother who we had to call 911
Yes.
with things for her. And this is very similar to the social worker program. How long have you been trying to implement different responses to people? Like if you're noticing, like, can you speak to that a little bit more? You talked about the
Sure.
fact that if you're noticing it's the same person, have you implemented that same kind of technique with the social worker program where you're getting them trying to direct them to different services?
Yes, and so it's we have a full-time public education coordinator.
Okay.
Which is fantastic that we're fortunate to have that full-time position. Part of her responsibilities is what we call our EMS follow-up. And this is something that we've probably been, for the past year or so, we started some initial efforts a couple of years ago, but I would say really over the last year is when we've started to ramp that up. And we have much more that we want to do in that area. But basically what will happen is when our crews go out, when our firefighter paramedics go out, and if they identify a resident, and it could be multiple things, if they identify a resident that might be in need of other assistance or a different type of assistance, depending on the nature of it, sometimes we're able to utilize the social worker from the sheriff's office to assist us. If it's in the city of McHenry, the city of McHenry hired their own social worker, so we work with him on those things. We will contact senior services, we will try and see if there's a resource to help assist that resident. And we've had some success stories with that. But it's very definitely, it's an ongoing thing, and it's a program that we plan to expand in future years.
Kelly?
So when you were talking about young people, when my brother was in high school and college, he was a volunteer firefighter for our rural fire protection district. So I think I have a 16-year-old and a 19-year-old, and they have friends who don't know what they want to do. So yes, I can use that for one of them, that's for sure. Like if they just want to get a taste of it, or how do they start? I mean, can they call and show up and have a day in the life? Can they volunteer for the summer? How's that work?
So and that's a very good question. We do that through a variety of different ways. But to answer your question first, we do ride-alongs. And we do ride-alongs for a variety of different reasons. Sometimes it's individuals that are planning on testing for our department. We do ride-alongs. We have a partnership with McHenry County College with their fire science students where they do ride time with us. We also have that with McHenry High School. There's a biomedical program that the McHenry High School students can go through. As part of that, they do ride time with us. But we also, if an individual is just interested, maybe I kind of want to see a little bit more, and maybe I even want to test or even go down that road, we will give them an opportunity to do a ride-along. And we have some different parameters to it, but we will give them an opportunity to do a ride-along and to spend a day in the fire station. And I think what's very valuable is, as much as I love doing those talks, and I love having people come in and talking to them about being a firefighter, what we have found is that if you're a 16, 17, 18-year-old person, who you really want to talk to is someone who's within 3, 4, or 5 years of your age. And so one of the things, and you mentioned that you've gone to our webpage, if you go to the employment section on our webpage, you'll see about half a dozen photos come up of men and women that are on our department, that are in their 20s, that are awesome, awesome individuals, and they are what we call our brand ambassadors. And on there, you'll see their email addresses. Some of them have their phone numbers on there. And someone who's interested can call and talk directly to them. And then we can line up for them to do a ride-along with one of them. So it starts that relationship with someone who's maybe 3, 4, 5 years older than them and can relate to them and went through the college program, went through the high school program. So we absolutely, we do that. And for us, part of where that feeds into, this is where our Explorer post will come into line, is it's a feeder program, basically. Because if we can get them in as explorers or cadets, or we get someone who does a ride-along and who's interested in becoming a part-time member of our department, and for us, 21 is our minimum age, but if you're 18 and you have at least a semester of the fire science program, we will let individuals test. That becomes our feeder for our full-time members. And of the currently 45 full-time people that we have, over 90% of them came from our part-time ranks, which we think is fantastic. And then it's not because, and they get some extra points and that kind of thing, but they did very well in the process. And because I think we also hire on the part-time side, we hire some fantastic people. And then they make fantastic full-time employees. So absolutely, and I'll give you more of my cards, and they can contact me, and I will put them in contact with who coordinates that for our department. But yeah, we'd love to have them come and do a ride-along with us.
I'll tell them, thanks.
Thank you very much, Chief Alan Christopher, for being here and making the presentation.
Thanks for having us.
So also the idea is to invite the other 4 organizations that we make the appointments to, have them come and do at least a presentation about what their strategic plan looks like, what their challenges are, so that we actually are informed of what those bodies that we're kind of responsible for giving them the leadership, what are you doing, just so that there's no blowback there. In addition, I'm going to ask all of you, I thought this was phenomenal information. So if you have an opportunity when you talk, or someone calls you and says, I need a Rotary program, you know that you can ask maybe your fire district, McHenry. I think what we learn is there's a heck of a lot more coordination and professionalism than the general public really knows is out there. And so we need to kind of reaffirm that to our constituents. And so I would ask that, if you're given an opportunity, it's a great presentation. So thank you very much.
Thanks for having us in.
Thank you for doing this.
Okay. Kathy's already sent you the presentation, so you should have the maps and the rest of the information that's on there. So thank you very much for that, Kathy, too. Moving on, presentation. We've got Carrie here and Administrator Austin, who will kind of give us, I think, an overview of budget, of what's going on and kind of how that's going to impact.
Starting as soon as next month, we're going to have budgets in front of you. And we're going to try and do the presentations a little bit differently than we have in the past. So Carrie's going to, I think, hit three visits to standing committees this month. We're going to touch all of our 18 county board members. And so she's just going to give you a little bit overview of the tool and how you can look at things on your own if you want.
Can I just share my screen? Okay. All right, good morning. So I know that you guys on finance have already kind of heard us talking about this a little bit, but as Pete said, we wanted to get out before we really get into the budget process and talk to all the committees, so hopefully we can reach all the board members. Because what we found with last year was the direction was to kind of move quickly through some of the budget presentations, which I think is good, it's efficient, but I think there was maybe some detriment to the newer board members about, a little bit more what goes on behind the scene and things like that. So we still want to be efficient and fast, but in a different format. So hopefully a format that is easier for people to not only to ask the right questions, but also know how they can go out and find information on their own if they need it. So once I have this up and running, if you go to the finance page, under budget, I will have a link that says 2025 draft budget. So that's kind of the easiest way to do it, but we'll also have a link in all your packets that go out. And so when you click on that, it's going to bring you into Questica, where I set up this draft budget page. So this just talks a little bit about why we're doing it. Some of the stuff is still required for GFOA and things like that. And also too, that this year, per the budget policy, we're gonna focus a little bit more on the services and the functions of the departments. And so unfortunately, we don't have a fully integrated system. I think just the way, the tools that were available, we have that non-financial information in ClearGov, and that's what we use to develop the budget document. And then we have our financial information in Questica. So I tried to build this page so you could go to one place, and depending on what you're looking for, you could get to it from here. So if we click on this ClearGov non-financial information, it will open ClearGov. And while we're working on the draft budget, what's going to be available is your list of departments. So like I said, the focus here is going to be the services. So we're going to ask the departments to look at their services. We have this in all, we've had it for a couple years, but to update this and expand on this a little bit to talk about, what's mandated, what's not mandated, and then maybe talk about the impact of some of those services. So I think that is going to be the focus of what we talk about with our presentations. But then the other information is also going to be available the same, the highlights and goals, FTEs, and then the org chart. So that's stuff that's always in your packet. It's just hopefully a little bit easier to look at, and then you have access to everything throughout the whole budget process. So then for the financial information, if you go into Questica, and this is the 24 information, but once obviously we get the budget going, it'll look the same. It'll just have the 25. So this is a little bit hard because I feel like we get so many questions about, very high level questions to the very detailed questions. So I tried to set this up where if you just want to look at fund and you want to drill down by fund and then category, or you can come in here and you can drill down to the lowest level, which is our main account. So you could look at fund and then department, and then this is sorted in highest to lowest. Category, and then main account. So really, it's to hopefully make this easy to look at and drill down and find the information you need. And then also, here on this data export, you can always export the entire thing to just a really kind of raw data spreadsheet. But depending what you're looking for, if this is the kind of detail you want, it's available. So you don't have to wait for me, you can look at it at home. But also I know when I talk a lot with finance and audit, my warning, I guess, with this spreadsheet is that you have to take it in context. Like these funds all operate very differently. Even within like the general fund, you might see that health department has a big increase in salaries, where that on its own is like, what is that? But then if you look at like the grant revenue, it goes way up. So, I always want to give you guys the tools to look for yourself, but also know that we're in finance. We can sit down with you. We can go through each line if you want, talk about, any questions. Because I feel like some of the feedback I got was some board members weren't even sure what questions to ask. And I know it's a lot of information that we give to you, so I thought this was maybe a little bit better way to help you start formulating any questions you may have. So
We appreciate that more than we could possibly express. And I know that there are some people who look at the budget, from a completely different perspective. And in a day and age when we're responsible for explaining to our constituents what we're spending the money on, you're right. Again, I thank you very, very much for that. Anybody have any questions for Carrie? And you're always available, right?
I am always available.
So,
and also too, this is, you talk about the constituents. When I make this public for you guys to see, it's also going to be public for anyone to see. But keeping in mind, that when we're working on the budget, it's a constant changing document. But, to kind of get a little bit better glimpse of the behind the scenes, maybe will help people.
the only question I have is talk a little bit about how you interact with all the individual departments so that all of that information is kept kind of in real time.
So what we do is when we open up the budget process, we have a folder out for each department, and they are also to this year now with Open Book. Some departments can actually go in and just fill in their information straight into the software, which is really nice. But there's different, some departments feel more comfortable, some less, some are more engaged or less engaged. So we start with that. They enter in all their information, they enter their non-personnel information into Questica, and then they schedule a meeting with Pete and I. And that's where we really talk a lot about, we'll be talking about their services and functions and all that, but also too where we really kind of challenge them as to, last year you only spent this, why do you need this? And look at everything by line item detail. And also it's good to kind of hear about some of their challenges, or even the fire protection guy talking about getting a fire engine in 4 years. It's like, hearing stuff like that really, and each department has their own unique challenges. So once they do that, meet with us, we get everything cleaned up, and then we present to you guys. It's all the committees.
And I mean, we talked about this as part of our strategic plan, is to evaluate, right, programs and are they working? And I know that that's also part of the budget process. So, you know, when we create things, court service is the one I think we're doing, Gay. We're really kind of looking at, you know, are those things working the way we want them to work? And if they're not, how do we change them? You know, do we dump them and try all over again, or to make modifications and revisions? So that's part of the process as well, which gets reported to us. So I think you do a nice job, Mr. Sager. And why you're Kelly and you're Carolyn and he's Mr. Sager, I have no idea. I think it's Mayor Sager, so just, you know.
Thank you so much, Craig, for all the work on this and for bringing this forward to us routinely. We appreciate that very much. I think from a constituent's perspective, there are two things that are really just hard to understand about financing. And I'm not talking about just the financing of the county, but whether they're talking about counties or municipalities or school districts, because they're all different and they all have their uniqueness. But I think part of it is, number one, the fluidity. It's not static, and everybody wants to think that it's absolutely static, but it's just not. It's very fluid. And I think the other element is the fact that when we make decisions, we're making decisions not just for today, but for the future as well. And so they don't understand that. And just as you were talking about fire engines maybe having to be ordered, you know, 4 years out or something like that, they don't understand that you have to plan dollars for those things today that's going to get you to where you need to be then. It's the same thing as the question about the vehicles that we purchase and keeping the report square on that, because people don't understand, well, you just bought a whole bunch of vehicles. How come you have to have another set of vehicles, you know? And it's just the fact that, you know, it is so difficult sometimes for citizens out there, with all due respect, to understand that we make these decisions for today, but they are also going to be effective in the future. So it's just a challenge, I think, for everybody.
And I think that's one thing we're trying to adjust a little bit with this format is, you know, the budget document, once it's all printed out, is 400 pages or some, you know, that no one's gonna flip through. And so we're trying to make it, so it's easier to find, like if you're just looking for a department, but then also doing a little bit more writing, talking about some of those challenges where it's right at the beginning, you know, to help. It's still a lot, but making it easier.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
Thanks, Gary.
Thank you very, very much.
Thank you.
And moving on, old business. Can I invite Sandra and Sheriff to come on up and give us an update on the social work contract? Social worker contract.
So, yep, the police social worker. So we're coming to you late. You guys have already approved all these.
But we wanted to give you an update, even though we did approve it. It was a time issue and we thought it should be approved. But I also asked them to come and kind of give you a more detailed report.
Yeah.
So thank you.
So I wanted to just start by saying we really do everything that we can to not skip committees, especially law and government, because that's our primary liaison committee. There are a few times during the year that the timing just doesn't line up, and there's reasons why we want to push it. If we can wait, we do wait. So one of the things on your agenda today was the dispatching contracts. In that one, I don't have all the signed contracts in hand, but we know that we're going to get them. The municipalities are waiting to get those approved by their boards, and then they're gonna get them to us. But the police social worker, we got them right away. They started May 1st, so it was like, let's get these signed and going. This year, this was the second round of contracts for a police social worker. The first contract was kind of getting them into the program. We worked with Shaylin and Pete as far as how we were going to price the fees out for them. But truly, when we first started this program, it was designed to be a third, a third, a third. A third county, a third mental health board, and a third participating municipalities. bringing in the municipalities, the first round, they were not at a third. And we knew that. We were still gonna be building the program. We wanted it to be attractive and affordable. But this time, we built the contract so that by the end of the 4 years, they were at their third. So this time, Director Sergeant Amy Knope, she really had to go in and sit and talk to those municipalities about why it was costing them so much. She had to show the data, which we use a program called SOMA, and municipalities, partners can do referrals through the program and put data into the program, so we can share that back with them, the Mental Health Board and the County Board. I believe only 2 entities did not renew with us. They're smaller ones, and they just basically said we can't afford this.
It's a financial issue. It's not anything that you guys are doing inappropriately or incorrectly. It's just they have priorities, right?
Yeah.
And that's gonna get tougher. I don't know if anybody looked at the budget yet, but municipalities are kind of getting screwed again.
Yeah.
So, again, it always does make it a
Yeah.
challenge.
In one of those municipalities, unfortunately, they had a lot of referrals, a large amount. So I think at the end of the day, we're probably still gonna have to deal
We'll figure that out,
with some of those anyway, because that's the mission of the sheriff's office. But really excited to move forward with this. I know that sheriff's office met with the 708 board. We do purchase a position through them. We do 2 purchase a position, and that's kind of how they do their third. They're proposing that we do it now through the actual grant cycle. So we're gonna sit down and learn more about that. In the past, the grant cycle, it was more of a reimbursement, a monthly, you show them everything and they give you the money. And there's a lot of hard work from the police social workers on that. We wanna make sure they're not spending all their time doing reporting. So we're gonna sit and do that, but with the legislation that hopefully is gonna come through, we can bring back to the table some of the municipalities that couldn't, smaller villages that couldn't participate, and give some relief to the county for their third for this program.
Would it be inappropriate to ask who they were? I mean, I don't want to put anybody on the spot.
I defer to the entity. I don't know about
Just because, and if that's.
privacy issues, I don't know.
I don't know.
I don't think there's privacy
No,
issues.
because you're gonna see who the contract is.
Right,
Wonder Lake,
So,
Wonder
there
Lake
you
was a
go.
larger agency that we were just talking about.
Yeah,
And
and
then,
I think it was it Holiday Hills?
I believe you're
Yeah,
correct.
Yeah.
I kind of thought maybe.
Wonder Lake we gotta figure that out and work with them, work something.
They have a new chief too, so I know he's trying to figure out the way. They have a huge subdivision going
I
into.
know, I was gonna say they're getting bigger.
There were 14 houses that were at flat and are now up with roofs on them over the weekend. When I drove by this morning, I was
Think, how can they
floored.
weather a tornado?
Unbelievable, yeah, really.
There's a lot of
They're
things
really
that are
strong
going on
enough.
in
Yeah,
that
that's very,
village, so.
they're gonna be residents before we know it. People are gonna move in, yeah.
But I do think it's good to know, because I mean, if we're talking to our municipal partners and we understand that they're, because I would think that that would be a great program, well, for any of them,
Right.
really. And if there's ways that we can help smaller communities and get to the third. So the third for the 708 board is through
Purchase a position.
purchase of a position.
And we have two of them,
And that 2 through the 708 board, and that creates their third, or is that how?
correct. So when we first started through Scott Block, it really wasn't, it was just kind of an agreement on the side. And rightfully so, when Leo came in, she was like, we want to run you through the system like everyone else. So purchase a position was the easiest for us, where we still do monthly reporting with data, but it's at a higher level type of reporting.
Sergeant Knope is working with Leo on that too. I think a lot of that had to do with the 708 board and understanding that they're just not paying for just 2 people. Because at the end of the day, we all know that the money just goes into the program. You're really funding the whole program. So I think a lot of it has to do with an explanation on what their money is going towards. And I think their board wanted to see something tangible other than people. So I think.
Yeah, the purchase of positions are for the director and the supervisor, and they specifically said, which is great, that they don't want to provide support for admin. They want to support the actual on the ground.
They're mental health providers. They want to ensure that it's going to mental health and not just the administrative
And I think
portion.
what Sandy had talked about was the reporting that we're already doing for all the law enforcement agencies will be sufficient enough for the board for this grant. And I think that's really what we're working on, because like Sandy said, there's a lot of reporting that goes along with it. We only have so many people to do that reporting. We brought Soma on to provide that, so we have to bring another person on to do reporting, because these social workers are supposed to be doing their social work, not reports.
When we were in Washington and we were visiting with legislators, and they continually said, well, we have grant programs for that. That was the comment that was made. Sometimes those grants cost us more than the money that we receive in reporting requirements. And so you have to be careful with that. I agree. So I appreciate the fact that they're willing to work with you guys and accept what you can give.
Yep.
So, Ms. Wagner.
So if this program ends up to be in the budget at the state for the next budget cycle, do you think there will be enough money to bring in those 2 other municipalities who can't afford it?
Yes.
Depends on what the state gives us too, though.
Well, that's
Right.
true.
You know, I'm you know, the pie in the sky is that they pay for our program, right?
Bring them all in.
Yeah, and I think that then at that point in time, we'll have to discuss with the 3 entities, what does that dollar amount look like? What is the, you know, who is receiving the benefits from, you know, the state and all that? I think those are prudent conversations to have, that we just, you know, we don't just say, all right, county's off the hook now, the other 2 still have to pay into it or whatever, so we'll figure that out.
Right.
Any other questions? Mr. Sacher.
Just 2 comments quickly. First is, I can't tell you how much I appreciate Amy. I think she is one of the most phenomenal public servants that I have ever dealt with, because she just is always out there working with people, so many different projects and programs, and I just think she's a fantastic servant, so please give her my best regards as well. The second thing is, this is something beyond just this program, but in terms of so many other things that I think the state, in their mandating different requirements or imposing different requirements upon local municipalities, don't understand that smaller communities have huge challenges dealing with these things.
Yeah.
I mean, for some of the larger communities, frankly, you can just absorb that, right? It's just there. You can work it out because you've got the flexibility. But for some of these smaller communities, it's becoming life and death, frankly, for some of them. And I'm not sure that there's cognition enough about that. And so we've had lots of conversations at the COG level and others where we're trying to say, how can we all universally support the smaller communities in dealing with some of these issues? So I appreciate anything and everything you can do to ensure that those, not just those 2, are secure in the program opportunities, but other smaller communities as well. Thank you.
Yes,
And I think it's
Ms.
already,
Campbell.
I think you've already talked about it, is, and you mentioning Amy, because she is out there, right? So we got a chance to talk to her at PIN, but there's actually been a notable, you know, you've been able to document that there's been a reduction in recidivism by about 70%.
72 and a half, yeah.
Yeah, she had said 73, so I was just taking it down.
She rounds down, you round up.
I would be careful, but I didn't.
20 to 20, man.
I know. So.
Just went down to Springfield, I don't know my numbers, and it's questions asked, right?
But, which is fantastic. I mean, that's in what, year 1 of the.
That's for 2023, yeah. Now, and I just want to, so full transparency, that was the low-hanging fruit. Those are the individuals that were just never had services that we're able to get. The real work is actually going to be these next couple of years of the individuals that have been either just unaware of the services out there, unwilling to participate for whatever reasons. That's where the work is really going to come into play. So I want to make sure that, you know, next year we see it's only like a 30% recidivism. It's because we already took care of a good majority of individuals that, you know, were, I don't want to say easier to provide help, but they're easy, you know, the easier ones. These next couple of years are going to be, it's going to be the heavy lifting of getting individuals that have been, you know, severely degrading or, you know, have some severe issues that, you know, we're working hard on. So I think that's part of, you can play the numbers game, we can show how great some things are, but sometimes when the numbers don't look the same, I don't want to be all of our constituents to be discouraged, say, well, see, the program's not working. That's really not the case. We still are working, it's just, those one individual, in these next couple of years may be an equivalent to 10 or 15 individuals that we've already, gotten through, so.
Which is why I think we have asked for you guys to come and make those reports so that we too can answer those questions almost immediately if we get them from our constituents. No, those numbers, So we appreciate that too.
Yeah, which is a really interesting point. It's really more about, are we getting them the services that they need? So, right, in the end, and then just when we were talking about, fire protection district, the same thing. Are they getting the services that they need?
And I think there's going to be some heavy lifting as it relates to how are we educating all of our local jurisdiction, law enforcement agencies, and fire protection districts, and Crystal Lake Fire Department. And sometimes it's easier to do the hard thing right away. We're seeing some individuals that may be suicidal that will then be signed off by a hospital doctor to not come in. And now we're serving writs months later on that same individual with nothing in between that falls on my office to do. So we're having those conversations as well, because that's a lot of work that goes into that from my office, from a statute that says law enforcement should be using force on individuals that are non-criminal nature, that we're kind of getting into that now. So
You all know what writs are?
No, I was gonna say,
Okay.
yes.
sorry, cops off. So there are two levels that are going along with this. There is a voluntary order that is being signed by a judge, the state's attorney's office, where an individual may have gone through a mental health crisis through a police report that hasn't sought medical help, at least, where the state's attorney feels that they may be a threat. They are given a piece of paper that we serve to say, you go and see a mental health doctor and, on your own time, and then provide documentation that you're either fit or unfit, or how we're gonna move forward. If they don't do that, then they are served a writ by a judge where we, the sheriff's office, on an order from the judge, go grab that individual and then bring them to the mental health facility where they have to be seen. There's a lot of layers, and I'm trying to work with the state's attorney's office on that, because there's a lot of layers that go along with that. So, but that's going to be coming, and I want to make sure that we're all prepared with when it comes to that too. Like I said, there's a lot of layers that go along with that.
There's potential challenges that.
There's a lot of challenges
that
that
are
go along with
unforeseen that
Correct.
will arise.
Is
I'm
that,
sorry.
so RIT is what? Writ?
WRIT, a writ.
Oh, okay, sorry, I think.
Yep. Sorry.
And those have always existed.
Right, yeah.
Right,
This
so that's
has been law that's been going on for a while.
Right.
That now there's been an initiative on some individuals that think that we can get ahead of, or in front of, I should say, individuals that may have not gone through a mental health crisis, but are on the higher level of possibility of doing that, so we don't see an issue. So we're working on that, but.
We have cameras, we have all kinds of things today that we never had before, regardless of how long writs have been in place. Right. It's a little bit more complicated. Questions?
So it's a shame that the chiefs can't be here from the jurisdictions, because they would tell you how much they really enjoy having their caseworkers, and how much they depend on them, and how that's relieved so much time spent from the officers.
And it's really in the best interest of the people, right? I mean, Mr. Kunkel.
And I know of an individual applying actually to McHenry County Sheriff's Department now, whose entire college background is in the social services. I think he's got like a master's, but now he wants to pursue it in law enforcement, because the lean now is moving towards more of that instead of what the old-fashioned burly officer enforcing the law. So it might be another pool to pick from.
There definitely is a small percentage, but a percentage that you speak of individuals that see how the profession of law enforcement is going, where we're required to wear a lot of hats, and we welcome all.
He's also a jiu-jitsu expert.
That helps.
So I'm sure
I also would ask you to look at future agendas, because we will be inviting Crystal Lake to talk about the Crystal Lake Rural Fire Department and how all of that works, to one of our meetings to talk about their strategic plan and what they're doing. So maybe you can bump into them.
And I know that we've been in communications with the fire departments and how they fit in with this police social work program. It's just, it's a different piece. And we, a lot of time run parallel paths, but they do a lot of responding that law enforcement doesn't respond to, and where do they fit in with all of it too?
Any other questions? Thank you again for the time.
Thank you. Quick,
Yeah, I think that's always in order.
firearms training facility, open house.
Open house, yes, it was last Thursday, went really well. We had a great turnout. I think there will be a public open house. I got you, I feel you, I know where you're going with this.
There you go. I repeat, I don't care.
On June 11th, so really our first day of training was supposed to be June 11th, but then we found out that, and in talking with Pete, it was a great idea of maybe having an open house. What's that?
It was Mayor Kounig's idea.
Oh, Mayor Kounig's idea, I will give him credit as well. To have an open house for the public to see this facility, because it may alleviate some, concerns, or just be, kind of show what it is. We found out that Cary Public Works was having an open house on June 11th. And we approached them and said, why don't we just have like a campus open house? And they were open to that. That was supposed to be our first day of training. When we found out that they were gonna have an open house, like, maybe we shouldn't be training with firearms, while the open house is going on. So we're pushing that date back. So June 11th, and I believe it's from 4 to 6, 5 to 7, somewhere in that range. We'll have I think actually they pushed that out through the sheriff's office. I'll make sure that you guys get a copy of the invite, but it'll be nice to have the public come in, and then show them what the facility looks like, which, I'm excited about, to get that, up and running as well.
It's great inside. I'm sorry. No, it's really great inside, and I've never been in one myself. So, and how it's built into the ground, and so from the outside you're like, you don't realize how far in you're going.
Right.
And it's just the whole idea. It's great. I like Prim's Alley.
Yeah.
The times again for that were the public.
I think it's 5 to 7. I'll make sure that we communicate that with all the county board members. We'll get that to you for sure on the invite of it. I'm pretty sure it's 5 to 7.
Anything else?
Yeah, I guess one more thing. Next week, I'm going to DC, and I'll be meeting with Congresswoman Schakowsky to talk about the funding for the backside of the training facility that is supposed to be the future home of our police social work program. So I think we're asking, that's a $3.5 million piece of funding. So I'm going to be meeting with her and hopefully her office members or whoever over there to kind of talk more about that and really bring to light of the programs that, how this is spinning up and where we're at with all this. So keep your fingers crossed. Hopefully we can see that piece of funding come back to the county as well, which I think, that would be amazing to be able to finish out that back half of the building, and then going from our incubator space to the community foundation to a permanent home with some more abilities to bring individuals in, as opposed to, maybe meeting on the field or meeting somewhere else or meeting in a local police department, kind of a softer place for them to meet on the backside where they can feel a little bit more safe when they go through that process.
I would ask that, and yes, Mr. Sagar, I would ask that you incorporate the challenges for many of our smaller communities in any conversation you have with Congresswoman. She's pretty bright when it comes, so I feed her that little seed. I'm sorry, Mr. Sagar?
No, I just wondered, that federal dollars that might be coming potentially from Congresswoman Schakowsky, that's something we wouldn't see until December of 2025, right?
Yeah, I think that's a list.
It's for 25.
Time frame, in terms
So,
of the effort.
fortunately, the community foundation hasn't given us an eviction notice yet, and they've been working with us. I think that they understand. They just have asked that we stay in communication with them about where we're at with a lot of this. To be honest with you, I don't know exactly, so we'll just kind of have to take it as it goes. But yes, you are correct. It is a 25, a latter half of 25.
But you'll know it's included. Thank you. Great.
Thank you, guys. Appreciate it.
There is no need for executive session, so.
One more thing, I'm going down to Marengo in about an hour, and to meet with Congressman Foster and his staff and Mayor Coleshill to talk more about the water sewer funding to get down to 23.
Nice.
We'll see. I don't know if the actual congressman's gonna be there. I didn't wear a tie anyways.
Staff.
But-
That's right, staff, I always tell people.
But I do know that he's got a couple of staff members set up meetings.
All right, perfect.
Thank you.
Motion to adjourn.